Hitchcock is not just trying to scare you with this movie. He's trying to implicate you.
And at the end of the movie, question, what are your morals? What are you capable of?
That's why this movie is fucking dangerous. On this week's Movie HighLow, we're talking motel rooms, stuffed birds, and poorly timed showers. We all go a little mad sometimes. This is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Fresh out the shower for this one. Yeah.
Right?
Might be considering an Airbnb after a stay at the Bates Motel. Ayo.
Jesus. They decide to do another shot-for-shot remake in 2026. Maybe it will take place at an Airbnb. So welcome back to Movie HighLow, a podcast discussing the best and worst that cinema has to offer. I'm Dom.
This is Dee.
And this week's movie is Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, released on September 8th, 1960. This is a high episode, says who? The brain-trusted IMDb currently rated at an 8.5, making it the number 37 top movie on the website. The consensus at Rotten Tomatoes has it scored at 97%. The experts at Letterboxd give it an overall 4.3 out of 5. This movie was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Best Director, Alfred Hitchcock, his 5th and final nomination in this category. Best Supporting Actress, Janet Leigh. Best Cinematography, John L. Russell. And Best Art Direction, Set Decoration, it won 0
I was going to say
Oscars.
Janet Leigh got nominated, but not Anthony Perkins.
Well, it's funny you say that. Is there anybody else you notice being absent from this list here?
The detective.
What,
Bernard Herrmann?
Bernard Herrmann was not nominated for Best Score.
And it's like, it's one of those scores that's been kind of like aped and you just hear it and you know it's iconic.
Well, that right there is the perfect example of how ahead of its time this movie was, that audiences, I don't even think even understood that score was going to live forever in a way that they weren't even prepared for.
Right.
But you're right, Perkins not being nominated is a travesty. For anyone who has not seen the film, can you please read the synopsis?
Marion Crane is just your typical Phoenix secretary, in love with a man who can't afford to marry her, stuck in a life that feels too small, and suddenly trusted with $40,000 that is very much not hers. So she steals it. Bad idea. Completely out of her depth and increasingly paranoid, Marion dodges a suspicious highway cop, trades in her car, and eventually pulls into the lonely Bates Motel, run by shy, twitchy, bird-stuffing Norman Bates and his extremely difficult mother. But just when Marion decides to do the right thing and head home, Psycho does the thing and murders the person we thought the movie was about. Now the money barely matters. Norman is cleaning up the bathroom. A car is sinking into the swamp, and somehow Hitchcock has us worrying that the killer might get caught. Will Marion's sister and boyfriend uncover what happened at the Bates Motel, or will Mother make sure nobody checks out alive?
I love this movie. I've seen this movie a lot. You're a big fan of old movies, of black and white movies.
I appreciate them, I feel like, a little bit more than maybe.
What do you love about something that is not of the era that we are in?
I'm very in love with history, and I've always said that the closest thing to being in a time machine would be being transported back in time through a film, for instance, that you can kind of get a glimpse of the period. Now, this isn't about a historic subject matter, although if you talk about Ed Gein, it kind of is.
It's based on Ed Gein, so.
And there are some parallels to his life. I like the appeal of it because it feels almost haunting and creepy because you watch these movies and it's almost like watching a bunch of ghosts.
Yeah.
And then the world was different too. Like you watch how different things were and it's like, you can almost smell how old it is. You know what I mean? It becomes visceral. I always would love to be a fly on the wall back in this time, back in that time, back in whatever time, and I can't. So the closest thing you can get is film.
This is one of those movies that people will tell you if you're interested in film. This is an important touchstone in film. It's undeniably important.
Groundbreaking for the horror and thriller genre.
Groundbreaking for filmmaking language in general. Here's the thing. Psycho is not scary because of what it shows you. It's scary because of what it does to your trust. Psycho is famous, obviously, for the infamous shower scene.
Mm-hmm.
The real trick is that Hitchcock kills the movie that you thought that you were watching. For the first half, you think that this is Marion Crane's story.
Right.
You watch her steal the money, you worry about the cop, you worry about the car, you want her to get away with it. Then she gets murdered, and somehow, 10 minutes later, Hitchcock has you sitting there thinking, please let Norman get that car into the swamp. The movie keeps moving your sympathy to places that you don't want it to go. And I feel like that's the real evil genius behind what this movie is doing, is it lies to you about whose movie it is, and then what kind of movie it is, and what kind of person you are while you're watching it.
Well, the other part of it too, I mean, if you think about it, when you're seeing the scene where he's watching the car go into the swamp, you don't really know that he necessarily did it yet. either. So you kind of feel like, oh man, this poor guy that's working so hard to get this controlling mom tearing into him, laying into him, and like he's just trying to stay afloat. You know, he's probably kind of lonely, doesn't come across a lot of people because the old highway. But I think that's part of the reason that you feel like, oh no, let Norman get away with it because you don't think that he has anything to do with it initially.
He's a beautiful son. And it's an interesting movie because it's a different movie the first time you see it and you don't know what the twist is. And it's a different movie
of course.
The second time.
Right, then you're watching it through a different lens for sure.
And I think that those are always the most interesting movies to watch, are the movies that demand a reevaluation.
Do you know if the first time you saw it, you kind of knew that he was...
I didn't.
I mean, you probably knew the lore of it a little bit. People talked about it.
I knew the lore of it. The first time I saw the movie, I did not know what the twist was. The reason we have to start with this as the first high is because it's literally the first thing that hits you the minute you hit play on the movie. Good God, that fucking score.
I know.
Oh my God.
That's actually the first high I wrote down. I wrote, the music in the opening credits immediately sets the frenetic tone. That and then the flashy effects, like the wipes and all. It's almost aggressive and manic.
The score is attacking you before the movie even starts.
Right, for sure.
The strings feel like guilt, panic, split personalities. That score is so famous that it's hard to hear it fresh, but when you really listen to it, it sounds like the movie is being cut into pieces. Even the credits are kind of doing, the actual credits are doing that like split cut kind of thing. It's almost showing you the multiple personalities.
Honestly, I'm going to get totally film geeky for a second.
Go for
music geeky, not film geeky, music geeky. Yes, there's the pizzicato quick dun 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 dun, the quick strikes, the staccato attacks that are amazing, and they're sharp. They're stabbing almost like a knife, and also like probably the psyche of this young man that you don't quite know about yet. But also when you think about that, when it starts getting melodic and it's legato now, you feel the two sides of him through that melody. It actually evokes the psychological element of what's happening with the tormented character, particularly probably Marion Crane, but I think Anthony Perkins.
100%.
Anthony Perkins' character.
Hitchcock's about to make a movie that's about divided identity, broken trust, and hidden violence, and Herrmann is basically announcing that by turning the orchestra into a nervous breakdown.
Right.
That's what he's doing.
And I think that's what a good film score does. The music is saying something. It's sending a message through the notation.
Another high of this movie is that Hitchcock's camera is telling the story. One of the biggest things that jumped out at me on this rewatch is how much Hitchcock trusts the camera to do the storytelling. This is something that Hitchcock has always been great at. He does it in all of his movies, but it's really on full display here. Perfect example of this is Marion's decision to steal the money because she
keeps looking back at the envelope.
She doesn't need to announce it out loud that she's going to steal it. After she's given the money to put in the safety deposit box, we cut to her at her house and Hitchcock pushes in on the envelope sitting on the bed, and then he pans over to the suitcase. And we immediately get the decision that's forming in her mind.
She's getting ready to leave. Yeah.
And she doesn't have to say a word. A lot of the storytelling is Hitchcock knowing when it needs to be a dialogue scene and Hitchcock knowing when I'm going to use the visual language of film to show the things that I want.
To tell the story. Show, don't tell.
Even the opening shot, I think, has that feeling because the technology isn't quite there yet. It hasn't matched what Hitchcock's imagination is yet, but the idea is there because the camera wants to move through walls, through windows, into private spaces where people are doing things that they shouldn't do. It's that great shot of the cityscape in Phoenix. The camera is kind of moving through that window of the hotel room, and then it like passes into the window, and now you're in the room with Sam and Marion. What I love is that you can see that in later filmmakers, specifically David Fincher, who is doing a lot of digital versions of the exact same impossible camera move. I immediately think of Right Before the Home Invasion in Panic Room, where it's the camera is going like through the arm of the teapot. It's like going all around the room, and then it goes into the lock of the door when it can't unlock. It's this idea that the camera becomes this fluid character.
And again, it's artistic. It's not just telling story at base level. It's like doing something next level with it. I feel like this movie is like the birth of not just a horror movie, but a psychological thriller.
Definitely. Hitchcock makes us complicit in Marion's crime. This is the first trick that Psycho pulls.
Because we can either root for her or hate her, and you probably don't assume anybody probably hates her. Right.
She's wrong. She steals $40,000. She betrays trust. She runs. But once she gets in that car, Hitchcock locks us, the audience, into her anxiety.
Right.
The cop with the giant bug aviators sticking his head in the window.
I'll tell you why, though. And I'll tell you why.
Go for it.
It's because it establishes in the beginning of the movie, she's probably like 30-ish, maybe 30 on the nose, maybe just over 30 years old. She was married. Her lover was married. She obviously wants to marry him, but he doesn't have a lot of means to do so. Plus, he's paying alimony to his ex-wife, and that's going to be a hardship financially on them. It establishes all these things that you almost want that for her. Don't you want her to have a chance? So she seems like a nice young girl. She seems a little down on her luck. Like she's working this job, but she seems kind of sad underneath it all. And then no less that it's a client of her boss that's kind of hitting on her.
It's an asshole.
Who's kind of a trash bag. So all the more reason you're like, good, take that money for you, girl. You know what I mean? That's part of how it makes you complicit.
And honestly, the way that it establishes that character where he's talking about the money like it's throwaway money, it's fuck you money. This guy's like, yeah, 40 grand. I'm not buying happiness. I'm buying off unhappiness.
Yeah.
This means nothing to me. The way that the movie plants that idea in your mind is that it's like, well, if she were to steal this money, it almost really wouldn't make much of an impact on the person she's stealing it from. That's really important. Although then when she's imagining the scenarios, right? She's imagining it as being like, oh my God, this is
the truth is it probably would bother him.
Of course it
It's
is.
a big show that man is putting on for like, oh yeah, my sweet little girl's 18, getting married. Like he's trying to put on a show for her.
Yeah.
But the truth is, today, somebody missing $40,000 a lot of money would be upset. Back then, 40,000 was probably like 4 million.
They update it that's one of the few things they changed in the modern remake is that 40,000 goes to 400,000. Yeah. So perhaps that's the equivalent. But
right. Maybe. Well, that made for 98, but for 2026, it's probably more inflation.
No
than
shit. Well,
especially
post-COVID,
now,
different thing. Yeah, no kidding. The thing that I love about this, though, is that it's the first moral trap that the movie sets. Mm-hmm. Hitchcock makes us root for the crime before we even realize that we've agreed to that.
He was doing things that weren't done by directors yet.
Let's uncork the biggest high of this movie.
Anthony Perkins.
Anthony Perkins.
Yes.
Anthony Perkins' performance as Norman Bates is incredible.
He's not just sinister. He plays that, but he makes you feel warm and enchanted first.
From the second he appears on screen, he doesn't come into the movie like a monster. Mm-mm. He comes in completely...
Oh, gee whiz. I didn't see you there. Sorry, I was raining so hard I didn't even hear you.
You immediately understand how someone like Marion could be disarmed by him.
Sure.
Her guard's up. She is very fucking paranoid.
And his is up too, but he's not sure. It's different guards up, kind of. You know what I mean?
But she opens up to him. She talks to him.
She trusts him. Right.
Which
she made her a sandwich, and this guy seems nice. He loves his mom. Okay.
I think what makes his performance so scary is that his harmlessness is like a disguise. Hitchcock finds a way to weaponize that later. Mm-hmm. The stammers, his posture, the way the smile kind of sits on his face for a beat too long. Like, it's very mannered.
I will say that scene where she's eating the sandwich in his little den there with the taxidermy all around, you get this glimpse into, maybe this guy's not 100% all right.
He's frightening because the danger's buried deep inside of him. And that's the thing. We do start to catch glimpses of what the danger is in the parlor scene.
Even before the parlor scene, she's about to invite him into her room. And you see he has trepidation.
He stops himself.
He has trepidation.
He stops himself.
Because
he knows if he goes in that room, what might happen.
That's probably what's going to happen there. And it won't be his mother, per se, to be him.
And can he handle that?
Yeah.
The parlor scene is the whole movie.
Right.
He invites her for supper. Mm-hmm. They're going to, like you said,
sandwiches and milk.
He stops himself from going into her room. Then he invites her into the office. Then he says, the office is too officious. Why don't we go back into the parlor? They go into this room. You would think what she sees should be the first immediate red flag of like, get the fuck out of there.
Right.
But what happens is they settle into a conversation. What's so frightening is this conversation that they have, is them talking about
his mother,
but really about him. He says, this is so great. He says the line where his mother is as harmless as one of those stuffed birds. Mm-hmm. And that is
telling.
Insane foreshadowing.
Right.
It's the movie just told you the ending. It's full on prestige. Are you watching closely? Mm-hmm. The birds in that scene matter. How they're framed. The shots of like him sitting in the chair where he's got just a little too much headroom because it's framing for the birds in the background as if they're going to swoop into the scene.
Right.
That's all very intentional.
It's like visual suspense. It's visual suspense.
It is.
Yeah.
And Norman at one point says he doesn't like the way that beasts look when they're stuffed. He only likes birds because they're passive. That's his entire psychology. Preserve the passive thing. Control it. Keep it still. Keep it from leaving. That's what he
I didn't think
do.
that either, but that makes a lot of sense.
And obviously, the actual dialogue of that scene, I think the way that scene is written, the way it escalates is so beautiful and intense because it does provoke him. It's where Marion kind of confronts him with this idea of your mother's making your life harder for you, and he's immediately becoming defensive.
What about
and
even the
protective of
line
her.
about like eats like a bird? He has to refute that. Well, I find that interesting. The way that's an expression, eats like a bird, because in actuality, birds
eat a
actually.
great lot.
Have you actually watched? It's almost like again, it's symbolic. It's like look at him. He kind of seems like a bird, and like he's the skinny little young guy that just seems kind of boyish and nice. But maybe he not eats a lot, but murders a lot. And then you get that later in the movie that he probably has done this more than once.
we got to get into that.
But they don't talk about it. But it's like, even that part of the dialogue, I feel like I feel like there's a ton of foreshadowing, visually, dialogue. There's tons of foreshadowing in this movie.
So the only other thing I want to talk about with the Perkins performance before we move on is there's a shot in the movie, like in the second half of the movie, when Sam comes back to the motel looking for Arbogast, and he's screaming, he's like, Arbogast, Arbogast, and there's a shot of Norman behind the house where the camera kind of crawls towards him, and he looks at the camera and he's half in shadow. It's this beautiful, scary cinematic shot of him. It reminds me of a shot that is very, very similar in the Bela Lugosi 1930s Dracula movie where the camera's crawling towards Bela Lugosi. And I feel like that's an intentional callback by Hitchcock, as if he's trying to visually communicate in that shot that there were monsters in films before this. There was Dracula, there was Frankenstein, there was the werewolf.
Hollywood monsters.
There were monsters in movies before this. After this, we're making a line of demarcation where these were the monsters of old and these are going to be the monsters of new. Norman Bates, the monster is us.
Because I know that this story is kind of loosely based on Ed Gein, it's because of things like that. By today's standards, it would be shocking. Back then, it was like, you couldn't even put it into words. It was like, right, that is almost the scariest thing. It's not werewolf, Dracula, Frankenstein. What about the monsters in all of us? The idea of like this scary shit we can become as people.
Obviously, we have to talk about the shower scene and how it's one of the most important scenes in movie history. The editing, the score, the violence, the way that you think you saw more than what you actually see. All of that is important. What hit me watching it this time is how cowardly the murder is. Because Marion has no chance. She has no opportunity to defend herself. I immediately think of something like the scene in Scream with Tatum, when Ghostface cuts her on the arm and her immediate fight or flight response kicks in and she's like grabbing the beer bottles and throwing them at him.
She has a chance to fight and defend herself.
Like Marion doesn't have that chance. The vulnerability of being attacked while you're in the shower was always what made that scene so scary.
I still get afraid to be in a shower, especially when you're traveling for work. I get paranoid.
The way that this movie made people afraid of the shower is very similar to the way that Jaws made people afraid of the ocean. It preys on a deep, universal, shared insecurity. And that's brilliant.
It makes it scary to take a shower. It makes it scary to go to bed even. Oh my God, what's gonna happen when I'm vulnerable?
Hitchcock makes us complicit again with Norman, because the car sinking into the swamp is one of the most evil things that Hitchcock does for the audience. Norman is covering up a murder. He's disposing of Marion's body, her car, her money,
Her belongings, everything.
And when the car stops sinking for a second, we collectively as the audience, our heart stops for a second. 10 minutes ago, we were horrified by the murder, and now we're worried about the murderer's cover.
Is he gonna get away with this?
Can he get away with it? It's something immoral that's being done to the audience's nervous system. Every time I watch the movie, I really get to that part of the movie and I'm like, how is he pulling this off? This is one of the things that people always talk about with Psycho. It kills its protagonist halfway through and the audience has no idea what the movie is even going to be about anymore. This may always be considered a high, and I understand why. In 1960, that was shocking. I think it's a sneaky low because I do think that yes, this movie does restart in the middle. And when Jaws restarts in the middle, Jaws becomes a better movie halfway through. I do think that the first half of this movie is stronger than the second half of this movie.
But it starts to reveal some of the things that in the second half that you don't know, like it starts to give you the bombshells.
This is where you and I might diverge about whether this is a high or a low. Because to me, Marion and Norman feel like modern movie characters. They feel like the future of what movies are going to be. Sam and Lila, they feel more like characters from an earlier era. So the second half is still good, but the energy does change. The first half of Psycho feels like the future kicking the door open, and the second half of Psycho feels like it's the past trying to solve it.
I mean, I didn't put that together, but I can see that, yeah.
So let's take a break here. We'll come back and we'll talk about the lows, God forbid, the lows of Psycho.
Don't get stuck in a shower.
Try not to.
She's as harmless as one of those stuffed birds. It's not as if she were a maniac, a raving thing. She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes. Haven't you?
Yes. Sometimes just one time can be enough.
It might feel sacrilegious to level any charge against this movie. I think for me, the first low of this movie is Sam Loomis.
Oh, he's very good looking, so
Sure.
that's right. That's what they're trying to go for.
That's
like,
fine.
Oh, he's
Right. He's your dapper, late 50s. He's a fucking Don Draper. That's what he
he
is,
looks like Marlon Brando to me.
basically.
Early Marlon.
But what I'm saying is that character is probably the clearest, weakest link. And it's not that the character breaks the movie, but compared to Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins, he feels like he walked in from an older film.
I know what you mean.
The way that the acting that Anthony Perkins is doing in this movie feels invisible. It feels like he's just inhabiting like that's Norman Bates. This guy, the way he's talking and telling you about what he's going.
Feels more like the old school.
My boss is paying for this trip, and, well, it's 90% business.
Buy a new one. In a new town where you won't have to hide your mother. I bet your mother knows where the money is and what you did to get it.
Sam feels like a guy from a different acting era trying to solve a movie that has already moved past him. And that may be part of why the investigation section, while it's still strong, doesn't feel quite as electric as the first half
Well,
of
let's
the
talk
movie.
for a second about who's the Arbogast?
Arbogast.
He's kind of the unsung hero of the movie, I feel like.
They dispose of him very quickly.
Right.
They get rid of him
But
real
kind of like
fast.
her too.
I know.
It's you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of Misery.
You think
It reminds
you
me
think
of
he's
the
gonna
fact
solve it.
exactly. It reminds me of Misery, like the fucking sheriff. Like you think this is gonna be it, and it's gonna like now we're gonna be able to release the air from our lungs and breathe again. Nope.
He shows up, he's doing his due diligence. He's going to all of the local motels and he's talking to all the people and he's asking all the basic questions. And something immediately catches his interest with Norman, where all of a sudden what should be a very standard interview turns into, I'm catching you in a lie. I'm catching you in another lie. Norman is so bad at lying. Norman doesn't know how to lie to this guy.
Right.
And the way that conversation builds is that Arbogast was immediately ready to dismiss this guy. And then a couple of seconds with him, he's like, nope, something happened here. In his death, the way that he dies, that you see quote unquote mother kill him in that shot with the forced perspective of him falling down the stairs, which
Which
looks
is
a little
kinda terrible.
cheesy.
It's
It looks a little cheesy.
I remember going to like Universal Studios and they had like a thing where it's like you can be in the and like they show you the screen and like you pretend you're falling or like but it doesn't look realistic. It's more like you're falling into space, not falling down a flight of stairs.
I think
but-
it's more about that they dispose of that character in a way where, again, he's the most interesting character of the second
and
half.
he's so close to like
and
solving
he's
this.
right there. He's about to do it.
But that's the whole tragedy.
Hard to pull lows for this movie, but I think another low is the $40,000 math clue. This is planted earlier in the movie for what ends up being a very unnecessary payoff. For a movie that is so elegant about its visual storytelling, the bit where Marion writes down $40,000 minus 700 just feels very clunky because you can feel like this is just a screenplay planting a clue. The whole point is that Sam and Lila can find the ripped up piece of paper later and connect the dots, but compared again to how beautifully the camera is able to communicate Marion's decision to steal the money visually, this feels like the movie is just like underlining something that it doesn't need to do.
Oh, how convenient that the one piece of paper by the toilet is 40,000 minus 700 and like, oh, that's the figure that she had. That's the amount of money she had.
It's not a disaster, it's functional, but in a movie this sharp, when something is functional, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. The biggest low of this movie is the psychiatrist explanation at the end of the movie. I understand why it's there. For an audience in 1960, it probably needed some kind of explanation as to everything that the movie just did.
Right.
But good Lord, does it go on for way too long.
It really does. It really does. Because that's part of the beauty, like you said, the beauty of the movie, like the imagery, the use of images to tell a story. And it's like, and then to take it and then have to like explain it at the end. Why? You don't have to do this.
The only thing I like about the psychiatrist ending, honestly, and this is so easy to miss if you're really not paying attention, is that it does have the implication that Norman has done this before.
100% does.
They mention that there are 2 other missing girls, and that's genuinely chilling because it reframes the cleanup of what he's doing with Marion's murder as muscle memory.
Right, like I've done this before.
He may seem shocked when he shows up, but part of him has been through this routine a couple of times.
I still attest that in that murder in this movie, he was half cognizant of that it was, he wasn't completely his mother then. He was trying to stop himself. He had impulses and urges he was trying to override. He failed in doing so.
So I know that we're in the lows, but I'm going to sneak in one last high. The final Norman Bates scene almost redeems the psychiatrist's speech at the end of the movie because it reminds you how terrifying this movie can be when it stops explaining things and it just visually communicates things. It's got Anthony Perkins at the end of the movie silently acting out the entire scene. Now, yes,
There's a ton of voiceover use.
you have mother, you have the mother's voice. And honestly, one of the best things that it does is when they're like, he feels a chill. Can I bring him a blanket? And when they bring the blanket in and the cop gives the blanket and you hear the mother's voice go,
Thank you.
that's fucking scary.
Yeah.
Then the entire scene plays out just on this little dance of his eyes, of what his eyes are doing in the room. He barely moves. Then he looks up from under his eyebrows, gives the little smile, and he says in mother's voice,
Why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
the psychiatrist explains the monster, and then Anthony Perkins becomes the monster again without having to move. He
Right.
just sits there in a blanket,
Yeah.
and he does the whole thing on his face.
But then when it's superimposes with the corpse of his mother, I love that. I think it's wicked creepy and effective.
So
and then the car being dragged from the swamp, the end. Even today, I'm like, it's creepy how they did that. And I bet that haunted audiences back then when they saw that image of like the superimposition of the corpse with his face and then the end, the fact that that's the last thing you see, it stays with you. And especially back then, I was probably like, oh my God, oh, it's so unsettling and creepy. Like, oh my God, are we all this underneath the surface? And like, it's very jarring.
Psycho is a high, and it's not because every single piece of it is perfect. The math clue, very clunky. Sam, not quite on the same level as Marion or Norman. The psychiatrist's speech at the end explains way too much for way too long, but the highs are historic. The score, the camera, the parlor scene, the shower, the car sinking, the transfer of guilt, Anthony Perkins.
Yes.
This is not just an important movie because history tells us it's an important movie. This thing has teeth. Hitchcock is not just trying to scare you with this movie.
Right.
He's trying to implicate you. He's trying to make you part
What are you?
of the murder.
You know, right.
He's trying to make
And
you...
at the end of the movie, question, what are your morals? What are your values?
Who do you
What are you
agree with?
capable of? Right.
That's why this movie is fucking dangerous.
Right. Agreed.
Next week, we will not have yet checked out of the Bates Motel. What happens if you copy the body of a masterpiece, but not the soul? We're talking Gus Van Sant's shot-for-shot remake of Psycho. And yes, Vince Vaughn is Norman Bates. He's so money he doesn't even know it. We'll see you next week.
Don't go rinsing the shampoo out of your hair without looking over your shoulder.
Stay out of the shower.
They're probably watching me. Well, let them. Let them see what kind of a person I am. I'm not even gonna swat that fly. I hope they are watching. They'll see. They'll see and they'll know. And they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.